Hi friends, how are you doing today? If I'm back with you again, you know when you see my mug, when you see my face, it's either because I've got something to teach you about live breakdowns or I've got something to sell you, or rather, a product to tell you about. Today, I'm going to tell you about a new brand. It's the first time I'm telling you about it, and yet I've been using it for over a year. The brand is Aferiy. You can say, the product here. There you go. This little baby weighs 20 kilos. So, as you might have guessed, a Aferiy is a brand of battery, a generator, as they say, a solar electric generator, a bit like other brands have shown you on this very channel. This model is the P280, which slots in between the P210 and the P310. So it's a new range, a new series, a new battery in the P series. And so I'm going to introduce it to you. I'll tell you about its advantages and disadvantages, and also how it compares to the competition. I've been able to test it for a few days. I have had, and I still have the P210 for a year now. And you'll see that there are some similarities. Before starting this test, this review, however you want to call it, just know that of course I have a code to offer you for this battery. The code is in the description. There will be a link. Either it's directly in the description or there's a link that takes you because there's also the review in article format on the website. So you'll have the code directly in the description. I'm not giving it to you verbally because it might change. So I'd rather put it and update it directly in the description. So this P280 is a 2,800 watt battery. And as you'll see later in the video, it can be expanded up to 10,240 watts. And that's where it starts to get really interesting when you're looking for autonomy in a small flat. So you should know that when you receive the battery, you get the battery. So how does the unboxing go, the long bouncing? The battery comes in 2 boxes, and I can tell you it's quite heavy. It really weighs a fair bit. Along with the battery, you get a small pouch containing the various connection cables you might need. That is, the cable that lets you connect to a solar panel with MC4 connectors, and the power cable that allows you to plug the battery directly into the mains. So along with that, they also provide a cover that allows you to protect the battery, because as far as the front ports are concerned, they're directly exposed at the front without any protection. Now this battery, the P280, looks almost identical in design to the P210. It's basically a larger version of the P210. In fact, if you put the P210 on top of the P280, you can see they look pretty much the same. With one difference, the P210 had a storage lid on top, which the P280 does not have. I think the P280 uses that space to add more batteries. So instead of a small storage compartment, you get this. I can tell you that I never use the storage space on the P210. So all the better. Might as well use the battery to actually add charging cells and increase its capacity. This battery gives you, as ports, 3 ports. 220 on the side of the battery, and where there's an improvement compared to the previous battery is that the cover protecting the sockets now opens downwards, which is good because on the old battery, the P210, when it was on the ground and you needed to plug something in, the cover opened upwards, so you had to do a bit of gymnastics to plug things in as you didn't have easy access. Thank you. You now have a direct visual access to the sockets, which is the case with this new battery, the P280. So I think they must have had several bits of feedback on this and decided to make some changes. A change that hasn't been made on the other side, where you'll find the socket for connecting the solar panels, there are 2 of them, and the battery's power input. You should know that this adapter, I'll show it to you. So here we've got a socket for connecting Aferiy's own solar panels. And here there's a socket for connecting solar panels from another brand or from several competing brands. In fact, the 2 other competing brands I have use the same cable, whereas Aferiy uses a slightly thicker cable. So be aware that if you already have cables, they can't be plugged directly into the battery because Aferiy's cable is a bit thicker. On the front, you'll find numerous ports, which aren't AC ports, but DC ports. There are 2 USB-A ports, 4 USB-C ports, of which 2 can deliver up to 140 watts, whereas the other two are at 20 watts. There's also an LED, which I have to say I hardly ever use. When you press it, you get a light straight away. If you press it again, it feels like Morse code, like an SOS signal. And if you press it one last time, it flashes. Well, at least it's there. It could come in handy. Personally, I know I've never needed it. So is it really something we need to keep on batteries? Especially when you're carrying around 25 kilos on a small battery that's meant to be portable. It's nice to have a light on a battery that weighs 25 kilos. Well, it's a concept. Unless you need to plug something in at night, you might need to plug in devices and think, I'll just use the built-in lamp. You'll also find plenty of ports like the cigarette lighter socket and other DC ports, which I personally use far less often. On the front, there's also an exceptionally large, clear and informative LCD screen that gives you all the essential information about input and output. Anyway, you know the drill. Important information about charging and discharging. You can activate the outputs using various buttons on the battery, so the outputs aren't always on. Right, as for the design, let's be honest, it's not the sexiest battery out there. You can tell it's all about functionality and usefulness. This isn't about showing off the most stylish battery. It's simply that it's genuinely practical. We're not here to go for flashy bling bling looks. What we have is a battery that's well finished. It's well thought out because it is quite heavy. And there are two handles on each side so you can carry it. I can't even imagine if it didn't have those two handles. So it's functional. It's useful. But it's definitely not the prettiest battery I've tested. So what are the strengths of this P280? As I mentioned before, it's the value for money. I can't give you exact prices because we're in a field where prices are always changing, but compared to the competition and with the same features, the P280 is cheaper. Another advantage of the brand, and therefore of this battery, is that it comes with a 7-year warranty. This is an extremely important point in this field, and it shows just how much Aferiy really values the quality of its products. This is where they add their value. Another significant advantage of this battery is its versatility. Why's that? Because even though it's a battery that weighs about 20 kilos, it can be used both in your camper van and at home. Because it has an advantage compared to the P210, it has a socket for connecting other battery modules in series. And with that, you can even set up a home storage system, a fairly substantial one at that. This battery on its own can have other modules added underneath, creating a tower so it can be used both when you're off adventuring and when you're at home to store the surplus from your solar panels, if you have quite a few, that is. It also charges quite quickly. I was able to test that myself. It really did only take me an hour and a half to fully recharge the battery. It has another feature. It comes with a dual connector socket. PV, the connectors I showed you earlier for the solar panels, which means you can plug in up to a total of 1,200 watts. What do I like less about this battery? Is the LCD screen. It's particularly large, which is cool, but the resolution isn't anything special. You can see the pixels and things like that. The resolution is limited. So, well, once again, let me remind you, we're talking about something practical and functional here, not flashy or showy. And that also shows in the screen, but that's because what we expect from the battery is performance. So I've done several tests. I've run several tests with the battery to charge different devices. And I certainly did not go easy on it because I plugged in an iPad device via the USB-A port. I connected 2 separate power banks using the USB-C ports. I made sure to use all of the available 120-volt electrical sockets. I charged a drone. I charged my electric scooter. And finally, at first, I tried to plug in 2 different devices for straightening hair or whatever, and they didn't draw enough power. So I went much further and grabbed a hairdryer, which can pull up to 2,000 watts. And what happened? Well, the battery didn't flinch. It was able to deliver 2,200 watts continuously, which could go on for half an hour. Of course, you don't dry your hair for half an hour, but I ran it, easily for a minute and a half, and the battery didn't flinch. It kept blowing, but it didn't make any noise because there are 2 good fans on the sides. I was a bit worried because the first time I switched it on, I heard the fan start up and honestly, it was pretty loud. I thought to myself, oh dear, I hope it's not going to keep blowing like that all the time. But actually, no. In the end, it's relatively quiet, and as I said, it didn't even flinch. Mind you, it's November now, so it's not exactly the hottest time of year. Maybe it didn't get hot enough for the fans to really kick in. But in any case, it was fine. As for the Aferiy app, well, I have to admit, I was actually quite surprised. It was a real obstacle course. Because to be fair, with the old Aferiy batteries, there wasn't any of that. There was no way to connect it to your phone. And that's a feature I quite like, to be honest. So yes, I do like being able to check the battery's charge remotely. On the box, it says there's an app. So I see the brand is called Aferiy. What do I do? I go on the Apple Store, search for Aferiy, and I see an app with the same logo and everything. Anyway, I download it. It's an app that tells me it's going to scan for batteries nearby. And then it doesn't find any batteries at all. I'm thinking, damn, what's going on? I try to find buttons on the battery, but I can't find any button on the battery. I've got another brand where you have to hold down one of the buttons to activate the Wi-Fi, to activate the Bluetooth, well, the wireless connection. But here, nothing happens. I send an email to my partner, the one who sent me the battery. I tell her, I'd like to connect it, but I can't figure out how to do it. She tells me the app needs to be up to date. I go back and check, my app is up to date. So then I do what you do when you can't find something. I simply go and look at the manual. I download the manual from the Aferiy website. And there, while looking to see if there's a button to activate, I spot a QR code to download an app. An app that doesn't have the Aferiy name at all. This app is called Bright EMS. And then there's a big P logo. No connection whatsoever. I'll give it a go. I download the app. I create an account again because every time you have to make a new account. And then it manages to find the battery. And so I end up with software that gives very basic information about the battery. So for now, yes, the feature, or rather the app, does exist. But that's not what sets it apart from its competitors. So who is this battery actually for? Well, as I more or less mentioned in the introduction, this battery is aimed at people who want to dip their toes in, who want to see how autonomy works. I mean, solar autonomy. For that, Aferiy is a good brand. It allows you not to pay excessively for a product you might not have otherwise. You'd pay more elsewhere for the same capabilities. Another advantage of this battery is its versatility. You can take it with you when travelling in a camper van, though not in a van. It'll be far too heavy for a van, whereas in a camper van it fits right in. So both for that and for use at home. So for me, the fact that it's scalable, that you can add extra batteries to it, is definitely a good advantage because it saves you from having to buy bigger batteries. Here, you just have to connect an additional one and that's it. For me, this is a battery aimed at those who are new to the world and want to get into it, the world of solar, and who are looking for a solution. A scalable one. There you go, dear friends. I hope you enjoyed this test video. Just a reminder, there's a promo code in the description. Don't hesitate to subscribe to the channel and join the playlist, a special playlist where you'll find all the tests. And I'll see you next time for another battery review.